Welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we'll learn about web crawler. We'll make this web crawler with the help of the Python. From the next section onwards, we have to learn about the JavaScript, its basic, and about the BeautifulSoup. So BeautifulSoup is an advanced tool that is going to be used while we just pen test some of the websites or web application. So we have to learn about that BeautifulSoup application in the next upcoming lectures. But for now, let me just make a simple web crawler in this lecture. So you may ask why we have to just make our own web crawler instead of just using that is the application that is available there. So answer here is that the most of the case those web applications or those pen testing application like BeautifulSoups are professionals. So that means they have some a disadvantage while talking about the small websites, but they are very advanced and they can have their price too. So they cannot be affordable by normal person, they are for professionals. So it's better to learn how to make your own web crawler, because we'll just test some basic websites, but using the BeautifulSoup we have to test some big websites, and that can be covered in the upcoming lecture. But for now, we'll just see how to make this web crawler, which we are going to cover in this lecture, with our simple programming language, that is Python. And you will see how easy it is to make the web crawler with the help of Python. So let's start from the basics before just jumping with the code. So first of all, when I just type here google.com, when I just hit enter, this you can see this web page just rendering over here. So this web page has in the form of the markup language that we normally call the HTML language. So what you see here is just a render, so a couple of images, but inside here you can see the source code containing the HTML language markup language code. So that means the computer will understand only that code, but not these images, not this layout, and not this navigation bar. So if you want to communicate through Python with the computer, you have to just work with this HTML parser. So we'll learn about that in the next lecture, but for now let's start from the basics. So first of all, we'll learn about the request, how to get the request, how to get the response from the Python, and basically to work with that we have to import some library first. So first of all, I'm going to open my PyCharm, that is this IDE, and next is to create the new Python file. I'll just say this is demo.py is my Python file. I'll just import this request package. It is request, and if you get any error that is saying that this is not the module, or basically no named module, you have to first import it, or basically you have to install it. So first of all, open your settings, go in your interpreter, add button over here, and type request. You will get this request. Install this package right here, apply here, and just press OK, and you will get this request easily imported on your project. So next thing what I want to do is simple URL. So let's test this URL here, which is twitter.com. So let's do this. So we'll see the twitter.com over here, and now I have to make use of this try catch block. So if you wonder why try catch block, because if you just see that if you just open any website, you are going to get some code over here, which is HTML code, and if you get 200 status code, that means this is the page, or this is the available page. But if you get any error, that will just throw you an exception. That means you have to catch that exception. So we have to catch that exception before this code fails. So first of all, we have to get the response. So I'll just say get response is going to be called from this request. So this is the module that we have just imported, and I have to call this get method. So this get method is a very important method, and this is going to get us the URL and parameters, and basically this will just give us the response object. So here I'll just pass the URL. So instead of just passing the URL, I will do something like, let me say HTTP, which is obviously the HTTP here, the website URL, and next I want to concatenate this with our URL. So if you see, this URL is twitter.com, so I'm just concatenating with this URL. So next thing I want to do is I want to print this response. So we have now response object. So the next thing is to just get this block, which is accept block, and here we have to catch that exception. But for now, let me just do something like, let me show you what this exception will be. So before that, let me just type this exception. So this exception will be request dot exception dot connection error. So this will be your exception. If this is the case, I'll just print that there is no website. So this will be message if there is any exception. So first of all, let me just run this and show you what is happening over here. So this is demo.py. I'm just running over here, and it will just check, and it is saying that there is a response 200. That means, okay, there is this website. So there is the presence of this website, that is twitter.com. So you can see how it is easy to see if there is a website or not from this request module. So it is pretty simple script, but we'll see now from the next lecture how to just get the subdomain, directories, and crawl the web page from our web crawler. For now, you can see if I just say something like, okay, let me type any gibberish, and if I say .com, and let me say something that is www.somegibberish.com, let me just run and show you. And it is saying there is no website because we just get to the exception. So if I just remove this exception, so for now let's see that if I just remove this exception, and now if I just print this again, so let me just run it, then you will see there is saying that there is exception called as request.exception.connection. So this was the same exception that we just handled before in the try catch block. If you just remember, we have this code in this except block that is saying request exception connection error. So this was the same exception that we just handled from this try catch block. So if there is no website, that is going to print there is no website, except it won't be something like this. So if you get any error like this, that means your code will just get failed and you will just get your application that is stopped. So instead of doing that, we want this to be cached over here if there is no website, and that will just print this. Instead, our application will work fine. It won't basically stop at that point. It will just run, showing us that there is no website. So you can see that if there is any website, let me say Facebook, then there will be, let me just print this, run demo, you will just get again the status code saying response 200. That means there is a website. So this response is HTTP response. We'll see about this response code in upcoming lecture while we just pen test some of the applications using the JavaScript payload. But for now, just remember this is the way in the Python to get the URL, check for its response. If there is, then it will just get the response of 200 status code. If there is not, we'll just catch this exception. It will just print something, or you can simply pass over here. Instead of printing anything, you can simply do pass. So this is the way from this request method. So next thing we want to do is to catch every subdomain of this website. So that will be covered in the next lecture. See you in the next. Welcome to this lecture. So in the previous lecture, we just made this simple script where we just imported this request package and we just get the response, and we saw if that website is present or not. So this is basic simple script that doesn't do anything for us. But now let's see some of the important concept in the web crawling technique. So in this lecture, we are going to just hijack subdomains of the main domain. So first of all, what is a subdomain? So if you just open the browser, if I just open this Wolfram Alpha, if I just search here, that is stackexchange.com, you just go down here and it is going to show us this subdomain tab showing there is a subdomain, there is a daily visitor and a fraction. So that means we'll see that there is a subdomain saying that math.stackexchange.com, gaming.stackexchange.com. so these are the subdomains. So these are the parts of your main domain. So it is also same as the domain, but it will be the part of your domain, that is the subdomain. So why we need this subdomain is basically the main domain. So similarly, if you saw in the Facebook, this is the main domain of the Facebook, and it will be monitored by most of the pen testers, and if they get any error, they will rectify it within a minute. So it is very hard to find the vulnerabilities in the main website. that is in this website you will find, but they will just rectify within a minute. So if you just hijack the subdomain, maybe the light.facebook.com, so it is easier to find the vulnerabilities in the subdomain rather than just going for the main domain. So we have to just check for every domain that is subdomain of this main domain, so that we can find the vulnerabilities and get to the hack of the part of the system basically. So this is very easy to hack the subdomain rather than just hacking the main domain of the system, because it is same as doing something like SQL injection or basically JavaScript cross-site scripting. In these subdomains will be easier than the main domain. So that's why we have to use some of the script to just extract that subdomain from the main domain, so that we can just test for the vulnerabilities in this subdomain also. So let's see how we can just get this subdomain from our Python script. So this will be interesting lecture. So let me just remove everything. We don't need this now. So first of all, I have already told you about this subdomain. There will be the subdomain that is a part of the domain. So for the subdomain, there is a couple of word list over here. So I have just searched in the GitHub. You can also get this GitHub link in the resource section, or simply I'll just put this all of this line of code in the notepad, and I'll just save this as a subdomain, and I'll provide you in the resource section. Make sure you grab it from there. So this is the same code which will contain a list of a word that we just can make to the test URL. So this will be your main URL, and if we just pass mail.facebook.com, let me say, if I say something like mail.facebook.com, this will be your subdomain of the www.facebook.com. So let's see how we can just get all of these domains. So first of all, we have to now import the request package that we just installed from the previous lecture. Let's define now request, and here I'll just pass the URL. So this URL will be the test URL, and basically we have done this same coding before, that is with the try and catch block to see the request. Basically we want if that websites exist or not. So first of all, I'll just say request dot get. So this get method is going to get the URL, and basically this is going to just concatenate with your URL. So I'll just paste this URL over here. So this is going to just return, and if there is no presence of that URL, we'll just get the exception, and we have seen this in the previous lecture. We are going to get the exception that is in the form of connection error. If this is the case, I am just going to print no such subdomains. Okay, this will be your message if there is an exception. So now we have just completed our request function. Let's go over here and make our target URL. So this will be our target URL. So first of all, let me just test some of the test websites. So instead of just going for the main website, or we can simply do something like google.com. So we can test this URL, so we can see if this contains many subdomains or not. So to do that, we have now this list. So let me just go over here. I have added in the resource section, and you can just check this out. So these are the couple of word lists. We have to see if this word list, or basically if this line of code has associated with our link or not, or basically our target URL or not. So first of all, we have to open this file. We have learned in the reading the file section in the basic Python how to open the file and how to read the file. So it will be quite easy for us to open the file now. So we have to make use of open statement. I'll just make the use of open statement in the path where this is located. So let me just go over here. Okay, first of all, let me just get this location real quick. So it will be right here. I'll copy this, and from here I'll just open here. So if I just paste this down, and now we have to have this subdomains.txt, which is the file. But if you see here, it is going with some error, so that means we have to give the double forward slashes in the case of Windows and the backward slashes in the case of Mac, and it will work fine in the case of Linux. You don't need to add anything in the case of Linux. So I'll just rename this. We have done this before while we just open the file. So we have forgotten one thing, the mode which we just open the file. I want to read the file, that means I'll just open the file in the mode of reading. So I'll just name this as file, and let's do something in this file. So if you see what we have in this file, we have a line. We have this one line containing a word, another line containing a word. So first of all, I want to make a loop in that file. So I'll just loop in that file. I want to just extract the word. So if you want to just remove this spaces between the line, that is done by the strip method. We have learned about this strip method in the string section. This is going to remove any white line spaces. It is, if there is something, let me say in this line, if there is this spaces, let me say in the video, if this is the spaces, it is going to remove that and it will just make something like this. So let's go back, and after we just strip that word, we have to make now test URL. So this test URL will be our subdomain. So let's make that subdomain. So how to make that subdomain is very interesting part. So let's go over here and see the Stack Exchange. So in the Stack Exchange, we have seen this subdomain now. It has shown that there will be some word at the beginning. Instead of www, it will be some word that should be these words over here, which is mail and www. So these words will be at the beginning, and after that there will be dot and the website name, which is our target URL. So let's make that over here. So first of all, it will be word, which we just extract from this file, subdomain.txt file, which is this file. So let's make that subdomain right here, and after that we have to concatenate with dot. And now next thing is to add the target URL. So I'll just say target URL over here, and if you see, this target URL should not contains www because it also should not contain this dot. So if you go over here, this target URL only contain this name and .com. That means we'll just remove everything. We'll just put here google.com as a target URL. So next thing is to get the response. So let's make another variable response, which will be to call this request method. So if you just go over here, this request method is going to see if that subdomain exists or not. If that exists, we'll just print out. If that doesn't, then we won't just get that URL. So there will be exception and we'll say no such subdomains. So instead of no such subdomains, you can simply pass. So next thing is to see the responses, and this is important. If there is a responses, and if you just remember from the next lecture, in the previous lecture, response will be the response object is the status code 200. So if there is the website that is available, it will just give us the response object of 200 status code. That means if that website contains, that means it will have the response object over here. If that doesn't contain, it will have none. That means we'll just see if that response exists, then we have to print that URL because that URL exists. So we'll just say something like subdomain, let's format this, exist. So I'll just use format over here, and we have to now format with the test URL. So we have done our programming over here. So this piece of a code is from the previous lecture where we just say if that URL exists or not. It will just return us the response object with the status code, and we just open this subdomain.txt, which is file we downloaded from the GitHub, and this is containing all of these subdomains part, and we just get that word from this file. We just added with this dot and the target URL, which is our google.com. We just send this to this request to check if that domain exists or not. If that exists, then we'll just say that subdomain exists. So it is pretty much simple code. So let me run this demo now. If I just run this, let me say subdomain mail.google.com exists, and it is checking everything. It is checking google.com also exists, yum.google.com exists, blog exists, support, admin, help, ads, mobile again. So this exists. So you can see pretty much it will check everything that is over here. So it will just take a time to see everything over here, because it is a bunch of a code writing over here which has many lines. So it will check everything to see if that domain exists or not. So this is the way to check for the subdomain. And you can also check for maybe for facebook.com instead of Google. You can check for now facebook.com and see what are the subdomain that is over there. In the case of the Facebook, you can see there is m.facebook exist, and you will see blog exist. So in this way you can see the subdomain of the real website from this Python script. So it is very helpful for the hackers. We'll learn about more web crawling technique in the next lecture. See you in the next one. Welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture we are going to make a simple web crawler. So what we are going to do here is we will just fetch the content of the websites. So instead of just getting some of these images or everything, we'll just get only the URL of the particular website, which is the basic usage of a web crawler. So if you have learned about spider, if you have heard about the spider from anywhere, that is going to do same as this. So it is going to just crawl in the web page, and it will just fetch the URL so that we can attack to that URL and see if it has get or post method. We'll see all about that in the JavaScript section, which will be dedicated section for the XSS attack. But for now, let's see how we can make the simple web crawler with the help of the Python language. So first of all, we'll just skip this request method from the previous lecture, which will just get this URL response and see if that exists or not. It will just particularly send us a request object with a status code of 200. That means that website has been there. That means it is okay. That is status 200 means the okay signal. That means there is the presence of that website. Now in this target URL, I want to include this URL. So this is our test phpvlnweb.com URL. It is a test website. So let me just insert it here. So let me just remove this, because we have already kept that HTTP over here in the request get. So we have a HTTP over here. So I have to make this colon right here. This is the part of the path. So now we have our target URL ready. So let's get the response now first. So let me just get the response as an request. So we have to just pass to this request method first, and we'll just pass this target URL. So we have now passed this target URL. Let's print that response. So what we're gonna do is we have to now see the response in the form of markup language. So if I just go over here and if I just see the page source, you are going to get this content. So this is the URL, or this is the page content that we want to fetch. So this is made by the HTML, which is a markup language. So we have to now fetch the URL from this markup language, or basically from the HTML. So we want to target only those links which have this URL, because these are important. What we don't care is about these images. So web crawler only acts in a way that it has to fetch only the URL. It doesn't care about this image, it doesn't care about this table, border, anything. It will just care about this anchor tag href attribute. So let's go to our PyCharm again, and we have to now see the content. So if you want to just get the content, it is done by this content attribute. So this is basically to get the HTML content, or basically this will give you the content of the web page. So let's see if this can do or not. So if I just run this, you will see that, let me just run this and I'll just go here. Then you could see we have fetched the content of this website. So you could see everything over here. So it is in the single line though, but we'll just make or modify this in a minute. But you can see we have fetched the content. This is a markup, and we have just fetched every content over here from this website. So it has these HTML languages made of the content, it has the width, table, and everything over here. So we have successfully fetched the website content with this simple response, and we just fetch the content from the website in this script. So next thing what you need to do is just modify this script so as to get the link from the website. So we have already learned about one thing, that is the regular expression. So if you just remember, in the previous lecture we have learned about the regular expression and how to use it in our programming language, or basically in our script. So first of all, what you need to do is you have to make use of that regular expression, and to do that you have to import that regular expression, and I'll just say import re, which is for the regular expression. After we just do that, let me just define one new method which will just extract links. So this method will just extract link, because if you see in our output, there is everything over here which is unnecessary information. So there is a relational sheet, or there is basically this template, PHP file, everything is there. This is unnecessary. What we really want is only the link, because web crawler is only interested on the link. It will just harvest those links. So that is the main reason we are making this extract link. So from that website we want to extract only the links. So for that we want to return by just refining with this regular expression. So we want to make use of this find all method. We have only learned about the match and the search method in the regular expression section, where we just give the pattern. So it is same as the match and search, but here what we do is we pass and we search in that sentence or in that content. So here I want to just pass now the pattern. So first argument to this find all is the pattern. So pattern should be inside this single quote. Now I'll just put the pattern over here. So I'll say href, because if you just go over here, all the links are inside this href. So let me just show over here. Then you could see it is here, that is the link is inserted inside this href attribute of the anchor tag. That means we are interested to search for this href tag. So let's go for this href tag. We have to add other wildcard characters too. So first wildcard character will be this colon, and the next one is this question mark. So this is very important. So we are searching for this href now inside this pattern. So it should be inside now parenthesis, because this is not exception, this should be compulsory. We are just saying that this portion should be compulsory. So what we just did over here was we are just searching for href equal to an opening quote. That means we are just making a pattern which will just get this part, which is href equal and the double quote. So we are just matching this pattern. We are finding this pattern in every part or in every content of that document. So we are just saying that get me href equal sign and this double quote in the document. After this pattern is finished, we want the next pattern. And if you just remember, this dot was a wild character, that means anything. So it can be the digit, it can be maybe your alphabetical character. So this dot means every alphabetical character, and if you just remember, this asterisk was any number of character. So this dot was for alphabetical or digit or any character. This asterisk was for one or more character, or it can be also 0 character. So it can be any number of character for this asterisk, and we'll just give the again this question mark. Maybe this is for absence or present at 1. So we have learned about this question mark in the regular expression. If you haven't gone through it, make sure you just check that section and you will just get understanding about these wildcard characters. So it is very much easy over here. So after you just get this pattern, you have to close with the double quote, because if you see here, this href tag is closed with this double quote. So we're just searching for this pattern that equals with href equal to and double quote, starting double quote. We don't care whatever is inside after this double quote. That is what we just saw here. That is anything can be after this single or after this double quote, and after that character is ended, there should be ending with this double quote, so that we just get the URL from that. So we just find that, we just return that from this extract link. So one thing what you can do here is, instead of just making this request over and over, you can simply remove this. You can simply get a response here. Okay, we are just returning, that means we have to first get the response. So we'll just get the response from this request module, and we'll just use this get method. We'll just pass here that is your URL. So that URL should be sent while we call this extract link. So instead of this request method, now we have to pass, that is we have to call basically this extract link method. So now we have simply called this. So instead of just printing this, now we have to now format this first. So we'll just remove this. So if you see here, here is something that we are finding. So we haven't put another argument in this findle. So if you ever remember, in that case where we just search or match for the pattern in the sentence, the next argument used to be the sentence, but it is not the sentence in this case. We have to search in the document, which is HTML document. So if you want the HTML document, it should be inside this response and content. So we are searching this pattern inside this document, which we just printed over here, which contains everything from this anchor tag or basically division tag, paragraph tag, everything. So next thing is just to go over here. We'll just now print our href link. So instead of this response, so this is no further the response, it is the link, which is href link. So now we have to just print that href link. So we have completed our web crawler over here. So if you see, what we just did here was we just imported the regular expression to just use this method which is called findle, which will just see this pattern in this document, because this pattern is to just fetch that URL from the document, HTML document. We don't care any other thing in this document except the URL. So we are just going for the URL, and after just we completed everything fetching from this URL, let me just close this, and now we just return that everything from URL in this extract link. We just get that link over here, we just print that link. So let me just run this real quick. Okay, it is giving us a error because obviously we haven't have here the HTTP. So first of all, you have to have the HTTP, and let it be the actual website. So just make sure you include this HTTP, otherwise it is not going to work. Let me run it one more time, and again it is saying something is missing. So okay, maybe about here we missed, maybe. So it comes because we have to now just decode it. So first of all, let me just decode this with maybe UTF-8, and let's see if this works. This is a decoding technique for the content of the HTML. So let me just run and see if this works. So okay, it is working. So this is giving us the href link. So you can see bunch of a PHP file over here. So you can see much more PHP file. So much of PHP file. You can also see the link over here. So our web crawler is working perfectly now. There was a small problem because of this decoding technique, which you should add in this content, because this is the UTF-8 decoding technique for the HTML parser. So you have to add to this response, and we are just matching with this pattern now. And I have already told about your pattern, that is basically we are searching for href pattern and any character after this double quote, and we have to close with this closing double quote at end. We are just searching for href attribute in the tag, and we just targeting this URL. So next thing what you can do is we can just make use of the for loop, so that we can just make one link in a one line. So what you need to do is, instead of just printing this, let me just comment this out. So if you just see our output, all of the link is in the single line. So if you want each line having a single link, you have to make use of this for loop. So I'll say for link in href link, I want to print a link. So now if I just print again, run the demo, you will see nothing. Okay, it should give you now. So now it has every link in the single line. You can see it has the CSS style too, so you can see the link over here. So we have successfully harvested the link from our web crawler, but this is not actually a perfect web crawler because you can see it has some of the links but in the form of PHP. So this is not a complete link, it is a relative link. So this link are called the relative link. This is not the complete link. If you just copy this and go and basically if you just put it over here, this is not going to work because this is nothing. And this will work if there is a relative path for this. So if you do something like if you copy this and put this as the directory after this forward slash, this is going to work. So that can be done with this parser. So we have to make use of now parser to join this URL with the link. So we can do that now. So first of all, after we just get this chref link, we can use the URL parse. So in order to just do that, we have to import now URL parse. So if you do something that import me URL parse, this is not going to work because we don't have URL parse in the version of a Python that is greater than 3. So we have to first import, or I can simply say from URL library. So if you want to work with this URL parse to make this URL look nice or become more like the URL rather than having the relative path, you have to use that URL parse module. So if you do something like import me URL parse, this is not going to work in the Python newer version. So all you have to do is you have to import first URL library, and from that you have to just get this parse, and from that you have to import now your URL parse. So this is the way to import the URL parse. Now you can use your URL parse. So what you're going to do here is we are going to make a new link for those type of relative links which have no meaning whatsoever over here. So if you see this login.php is alone, so we have to make something like this link for this login.php too. So let's make that. So first of all, I'll just make use of this URL parse. So we have something that is URL join over here, which is the method. So in the newer version you don't have this URL join maybe. So what we can do, let's check for the documentation maybe. So if I do this, okay, we can simply use URL join. So instead of URL parse, I'll just make use of this URL join. So in this URL join, what we want is our target URL, which is this URL. If you see, this should join with this link that we just have here. So you could wonder what happens for this type of link. So what happens if this link is just explored? For this type of link, okay, you can join with these target links, but what if we just find this? So is it going to just combine the two link and make us again the link that is the concatenation of these two links? No. So that is not in the case of this URL join. So it is only going to be active, this part or this statement is going to be active only in the case of the relative link. So it will be active in this part of link, but when it sees that the link starts from HTTP and all of this, then this will just ignore and it will just print this link. So let's see this in the action. So now you can completely see we have concatenate over here. So we have now that was so let me just remove this again and let me show you. So it was the case where we have these relative links. Now we have added from this URL join, and now let me run it. Then you will see completely the new link for each of these relative link. We have added this test PHP, which is our target website, from this parser. So the new way to do this joining is not from the URL parse in the newer version of the Python, it is from the URL join. So we used to do something like URL parse before. So we used to do this something like URL parse, and if you should something like URL parse and used to do with URL join. But this is not the case in the newer version. You can simply use URL join. So here you have to first import URL join if you want to use that URL join. So we have now made our simple web crawler, but a powerful web crawler which will just get every test link of the website, so that we can just test for the vulnerabilities in each of these link. We have seen how to get the subdomain of the link in the previous lecture, which was the important lecture 2. So this lecture was also important because we use now regular expression to match the patterns to find the link, or basically the thing we want to match in the document, that makes our link or basically web crawler much more efficient than before. We just join that link so that relative path becomes the complete link. So this will be wrap for this lecture. So in the upcoming lecture we'll see about the JavaScript and how we can just use JavaScript to attack on these type of applications, web applications and websites. So see you in Welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture we are going to make another web crawler, but in much more efficient and much easy way. So this will be using the next module, and that is BeautifulSoup. So it is very popular and powerful. So if you have ever harvested the URL from the links, then you should have heard this name, that is BeautifulSoup. So this BeautifulSoup automatically converts our incoming document to the Unicode, so that this decoding techniques should not be used. And this, you can see the pattern over here. So this should not be used if you use that BeautifulSoup. So it is much more easy if you just make the web crawler using the BeautifulSoup. So let's see how this works. So first of all, we have to just import this BeautifulSoup. So for that we have to first go to the settings and just import that module or install that package maybe. So I'll just say I have to install BS4, and that is a BeautifulSoup. And let me just install this package. It is installing, so let it give a time to just install that packages. So it has successfully installed our packages in this machine. So let me just press OK. So let me just create a new project over here, and let me say this is the new project, new Python file, and this will be demo2 and it will be demo2.py. So first of all, use that BS4, which is BeautifulSoup. From BS4 we want to import the BeautifulSoup module, or this is a class. BeautifulSoup is a class. So next is to import the request. So we want to get that URL request, or basically get the response from that URL. So next thing, I want to get the URL from the user. That means we can get the input from the user. So I'll just say enter a website for extraction, okay, extraction process or something like this. This will be message to the user. And the next thing what I want to do is get the response. So you know how to get the response. It is similar that we did in the previous lecture. Getting the request, use the get method, pass the URL. So here I'll just format it with HTTP, and now I'll say add this with our URL, or you can simply get the URL in the form of HTTP, but I want the user to enter only the URL but not this HTTP part. So next thing is to get the data. It is important. So data should be given in the form of text. So I'll just say response dot text. So this is the way, okay, it should be text. So we'll just get the text. Now we should use the BeautifulSoup. So let's see BeautifulSoup, which is the class, and here we have to pass the data that is in the form of text. So we'll just face this and we'll just make the object, basically instances of this BeautifulSoup over here. And now let's harvest this link. So you can see how easy it is. So we'll just use this BeautifulSoup instances, and we'll just use this find all method, same as that of regular expression method, but for now we have to only harvest this anchor tag. So what this is going to do is, it is going to just search in that document, HTML document, and it will just find this anchor tag. So if you just remember what we just have taught over here, that is in this page, if I go to the view page source, you could see that href tag is in this anchor tag. So this href attribute is in this anchor tag. That means we are just finding this anchor tag now. So instead of using this, you could see that this pattern which we just did over here, we can simply search that anchor tag and print now that is the link. So that link should be link.get. So inside of href we want to get that link. So this is so easy to get the link from the Beautiful Soup. So what we just did here, we just get the response, we just convert it into the text data and paste into the Beautiful Soup. We'll just instantiate that soup with this soup object, and we just find from that with this find all method, that is the href tag or basically anchor tag, and after that we get the content of that href with this get method. So if you see, this link will be in the form of dictionary. You can see this link also, this will be in the form of dictionary, and we want to get the link. So this dictionary will contain the href as a key and the link as a value. So we are just getting the href, that means we want only the link to be printed so that there is no encoding to be done. So if you see what we did in the previous lecture, we have to decode with this UTF-8, but in the case of Beautiful Soup, it is done automatically. It will just convert incoming document to the Unicode and outgoing document to UTF-8 decoding. So let's do this, and let's go to the demo2.py. let's run this file now, and it should be demo2.py. Now let me just enter the website. So this website will be this website. So let me just grab this, copy this, and let it go over here. Let me just paste it. So we don't want maybe this HTTP over here. So let's go over here and just remove this. Let's see if this works. So what happened is we just put here everything. So instead of that, I'll just say test php.vulnwave.com is my website. If I just hit enter, it is going to give us a link. So you can see how easy it is to make this link. So next thing what you can do is similar to that what we just did in the previous lecture. So let's go over here. Now you can make use of this URL join in order to just convert that relative link to the beautiful link. So let's go right over here and paste it down here, and after you get that href, you can simply join that link too. So you can see we can do something like this. We can just copy that link, and after you just get that, you can now print that link. So next thing is to just target URL. So this won't be the target URL, this will be your URL, and in this case it is only the URL, and we'll just join with that link. We can also print that link now after we just get that. So basically you can store this href over somewhere. So instead of just doing this, you can do something like, okay, let me just get this, and let me just store in the test link. If I say let me just store this in the test link, and after we just get that test link, I want to join that is with the test link, and let's print that link now. So you can simply do this, and now let's see if this works or not. So you can also simply print over here. So let me just run this demo again. You will see now this should have, okay, now again type that test php.vulnwave.com. So this will be wrap for this lecture. So we saw how we can do this way, that is using this URL request and regular expression way, and the next is easy way, that is using this Beautiful Soup. So this will be wrap for this lecture. See you in the next one.